My parents took me to dinner for my birthday. We are giving your inheritance to Chloe, Dad said. She has kids and you are alone. I sipped my water and asked, does Grandma know you stole it? The color drained from his face when I said, the account number. Grandma gave it to me 6 months before she died. We were sitting in her kitchen, the one with the yellow curtains she'd had since 1987 and refused to replace because they still worked fine. She was making tea she wasn't going to drink. Her hands had gotten shaky by then, the spoon catching the rim of the mug. She said it quietly, like she was telling me where she kept the spare key. Don't let your father near this. He'll smile and spend every penny. I wrote the number down in my notes app and filed it in a folder I labeled boring. I'd been driving her to chemo for 8 months by then. Every Tuesday, 7 a.m., 40 minutes each way. Same 3 classical stations, and she'd critique the conductors like she had a personal grudge against each of them. She never once said thank you, but she always had the passenger seat adjusted to my height before I arrived. That was how she said it. Dad showed up twice the whole last year. Both times he asked about the property value. Once he brought a real estate brochure. She just folded it into a small square and put it in the trash while he was still talking. She saw everything. So when she pressed a folded note into my hand at the end of one of those Tuesday drives and said, this is yours, I kept quiet. Took it home, didn't tell my sister, didn't tell my mom, just waited. The dinner was at a place my parents picked. White tablecloths, the kind of menu that doesn't list prices. They'd framed it as a birthday celebration, which I should have found suspicious because my dad considers a card from the drugstore to be sufficient effort. When I got there, my sister was already seated. She had the look she gets when something is about to happen that benefits her. Slightly too calm, eyes a little too still. Dad ordered wine before I sat down. He waited until the bread came. Then he folded his hands on the table like he was chairing a board meeting and told me they'd made a decision about Grandma's estate, that they'd looked at the family's needs holistically, that equity isn't always equality, that my sister has 3 kids and real financial pressure, and I had a good salary and no dependents and surely I could understand. My mom was nodding the whole time. My sister was looking at the menu. I sat there and thought about the yellow curtains, 8 months of Tuesday mornings, the folded note in my boring folder, and the fact that 2 weeks earlier I'd called Grandma's private lawyer. His name was on a card she'd slipped into my coat pocket at Christmas 2 years ago. I'd almost thrown it out. When I finally called, he answered on the second ring like he'd been expecting it. Grandma had told him I'd call eventually. She said I was the slow and careful type. He explained the second account, separate from the main estate, separate from anything Dad had access to or knew existed. Grandma had been quietly moving money into it for 3 years, $180,000. She did it herself, in amounts small enough not to trigger a conversation. He read me the instructions she'd left on file. My son believes he controls my estate. He does not. That is why you exist. I didn't say anything to anyone. Let 2 weeks pass. Dad finished his speech and looked at me like he was waiting for me to nod and make it easy on everyone. I picked up my water glass, took a sip, and asked if Grandma knew he'd stolen it. His hand was shaking when he set down his fork. He said I couldn't prove anything. I put my phone on the table and turned the screen toward him. It was an email from the lawyer, sent the day before Grandma died. She dictated it from the hospital. 3 sentences. Jessica receives the account in full. Thomas receives nothing from this fund. This instruction is final and irrevocable. My sister stopped looking at the menu. My mom put down her wine. Dad stared at the screen for a long time without speaking. Then he pushed back his chair and walked out. Didn't say anything to my mom, didn't look at my sister, just left. My sister looked at me across the table. She opened her mouth and closed it again. My mom was still holding her wine glass. I called the lawyer on the drive home. He said the transfer would complete within the week. He said Grandma had anticipated this exact conversation, down to the restaurant setting, and had found it, and I'm quoting here, entirely predictable. She was sharp until the end. Sharper than any of us deserved. I got home, fed my cat, and sat in the quiet for a while. Not sad, not angry, just still. The kind of still that comes after you've been waiting a long time for something, and it finally lands exactly where it was supposed to. Best birthday dinner I never ate. Full story on the channel linked below.